He was the one everyone laughed at. The awkward boy, the stammering scholar, the man whose own family dismissed him as weak. Yet in the shadows of Rome, Claudius was quietly observing, quietly learning, quietly waiting. Sometimes the softest whispers carry the deadliest truths, and Claudius had learned how to listen. The world mistook his tremors and hesitation for incompetence, but beneath that fragile exterior, a mind was sharpening, calculating, and memorizing every subtle move of those who underestimated him. He was the one everyone laughed at. The awkward boy, the stammering scholar, the man whose own family dismissed him as weak. Yet in the shadows of Rome, Claudius was quietly observing, quietly learning, quietly waiting. Sometimes the softest whispers carry the deadliest truths, and Claudius had learned how to listen. The world mistook his tremors and hesitation for incompetence, but beneath that fragile exterior, a mind was sharpening, calculating, and memorizing every subtle move of those who underestimated him. Behind every mock, every sneer, Claudius collected secrets. His limp, his stammer, his nervous gestures, what the world saw as weakness was camouflage. Rome was a place where strength was measured in muscle and arrogance, yet he found power in observation. While others flaunted swords and titles, he mapped the currents of influence, the hidden fears of senators, the quiet ambitions of his own family. Each insult, each dismissal became data, a guide to surviving a world that thrived on cruelty. In these moments, the laughter of others became his teacher. He realized that those who underestimate can often be conquered without a fight, and so he learned patience, the kind that builds empires quietly. Claudius was not simply avoiding the dangers of ridicule, he was studying them. He noticed the slight twitch in a cousin's eye before a lie, the tension in a senator's hands when plotting, the shadow of fear behind a soldier's pride. Every movement, every whispered conversation, every casual remark became a window into human ambition. It was a skill few possessed and fewer still recognized. Claudius found solace in scrolls, books, and dusty libraries, away from the mocking eyes of the court. He pored over histories of Rome's greatest leaders, analyzing their rise and fall, memorizing their triumphs, understanding their mistakes. He studied law, language, and the subtle art of rhetoric, even as nobles laughed at his speech impediment. While Rome roared around him in politics, gossip, and opulence, he built something far more enduring, a mind that could anticipate moves before they were made, a memory that captured everything others thought irrelevant. It was here, in quiet contemplation, that Claudius's genius began to grow. While others rushed into action blinded by ego, he observed the patterns of ambition, betrayal, and survival. Every scroll was a mirror reflecting his future, every lesson a tool he would one day wield. His quiet nature hid a strategic mind capable of orchestrating events on a scale that would later astonish the world. And yet, even in these shadows, a question lingered. Was this careful preparation merely survival? Or was it the blueprint of a man destined to rule? The real mystery of Claudius lies here. Why would a man so ridiculed later command the Roman Empire? Was it luck, fate, or the silent cunning of a man who learned to move invisibly? Some believed he was merely fortunate, rising after the chaos of Caligula's death. Others whispered that he had anticipated the moment all along, biding his time with the patience of a predator. Claudius understood that true power rarely announces itself. It grows quietly, like roots beneath the soil, invisible until the tree is too large to ignore. The boy who trembled under the gaze of others would one day command legions, enact reforms, and navigate the treacherous waters of Roman politics with a subtle hand. Yet even as history would eventually remember him as the stammering, awkward emperor, the deeper truth remained hidden. Claudius's strength was in the very qualities Rome despised: observation, patience, and quiet intellect. And perhaps that is the enduring mystery of Claudius, how the world can laugh at a man for a lifetime, unaware that he is quietly shaping the destiny of an empire, one imperceptible step at a time. While Rome mocked, he learned. While others flaunted power with prideful arrogance, Claudius immersed himself in the quiet, endless corridors of knowledge. He read by candlelight, tracing the rise and fall of emperors, memorizing laws and analyzing wars that shaped the empire. In the hush of libraries and scroll-filled rooms, he built a mind that no sword, no army could easily conquer. What the world mistook for weakness was, in truth, a secret power few could perceive. Every whispered conversation, every subtle gesture in the forum became part of Claudius's hidden education. He noted how senators smiled while plotting betrayal, how generals boasted yet trembled in uncertainty. Rome's chaos, full of laughter and mockery directed at him, became his laboratory. Each insult sharpened his understanding of human nature, each scoff a lesson in patience and calculation. Those who underestimated Claudius never realized the man who appeared timid and awkward could see farther than anyone in the room, his mind quietly mapping the world like a chessboard only he could envision. He wrote too. Histories, genealogies, and commentaries filled his private scrolls. Perhaps it was obsession, perhaps survival, but Claudius's scholarship went beyond mere learning. It was preparation. Every fact, every observation, every lesson learned in shadow would later become a tool of strategy, an invisible hand guiding him through the deadly currents of Roman politics. The scholar, the ridiculed outsider, was quietly assembling a web of knowledge and influence, waiting for the moment it could all be used. Claudius's love for history was more than curiosity. It was study of the patterns of power. He memorized the rise of Julius Caesar, the fall of Augustus's enemies, the subtle intrigues of courts long gone. He observed the triumphs of men who flaunted courage and the failures of those blinded by pride. In every story, Claudius found lessons for himself, guiding his future steps. The empire mocked him, but he understood the rhythms of politics better than anyone. He knew that time favors the patient, and that wisdom often hides behind humility. He also mastered languages, law, and diplomacy. While others used strength, Claudius used knowledge. Every scroll he touched, every passage he memorized was like a map, leading him through Rome's labyrinthine corridors of influence. Few suspected that the awkward, stammering man was quietly charting the empire's future, understanding both its fragility and its hidden opportunities. In silence, he became formidable. The mystery of Claudius's scholarship lies in what the world never saw. A man underestimated yet fully aware of the power he could wield. Rome's mockery was a shield, a perfect disguise for a mind that could manipulate events without drawing attention. Perhaps it was irony, perhaps foresight, but Claudius understood the advantage of invisibility. The world laughed while he learned, waited while he observed, and in those quiet years he became a strategist without equal. One day, the scholar in the shadows would emerge. The boy mocked for his tremors, the man overlooked for his awkwardness, would seize command with the subtle precision of one who had spent years studying the weaknesses of all around him. And even then, a part of him would remain hidden, a mystery buried beneath the image of a stammering, fragile emperor whose quiet mind had quietly mastered Rome long before anyone noticed. No one expected him to rise. The world laughed, the Senate scoffed, even his own family doubted him. And yet, in the chaos following Caligula's sudden death, Claudius found himself thrust into the most dangerous position imaginable, Emperor of Rome. A man deemed weak, timid, and awkward now held the keys to one of history's greatest empires. Was it mere chance, or something far deeper? Rome had erupted into panic. Caligula's assassination left a vacuum, a dangerous void where ambition, fear, and bloodlust collided. Senators whispered conspiracies, generals prepared their armies, and nobles maneuvered for control. Amid the storm, Claudius appeared, unexpected, almost absurd. Some say it was luck, others fate. But the mystery lingers. Why him? How could the stammering, limping scholar, long ridiculed, suddenly be the man everyone feared, or, in some cases, doubted enough to ignore until it was too late? Claudius's reaction was almost as surprising as his rise. He did not seize power with a dramatic declaration, nor did he storm the Senate demanding loyalty. Instead, he revealed himself cautiously, hiding behind a cloak of disbelief, letting others underestimate him for a moment longer. In the eyes of many, he seemed accidental, an emperor by circumstance rather than design. Yet perhaps the very illusion of accident was his first strategic move. The soldiers who found him in the palace, hiding among the curtains and doors like a frightened boy, were unsure whether to obey or mock. Claudius's stammer, his nervous laughter, and hesitant gestures suggested unpreparedness. But the mystery was already in motion. In that moment, the empire saw not weakness, but survival. Claudius's mere presence, unexpected and understated, became a rallying point. Those who could act swiftly to recognize his position ensured their survival. The rest underestimated him, just as he had always known they would. Even as he was declared emperor, Claudius's mind raced silently. Every whispered fear, every glance of suspicion from the Senate, every hesitant oath of loyalty was noted. He realized the empire would not forgive mistakes. Power had to be measured carefully, hidden in plain sight, guided by observation rather than bravado. The accidental emperor was perhaps the perfect disguise, allowing him to step into history while enemies still believed him harmless. The mystery deepens. Was Claudius truly accidental, or had he simply mastered patience so long that the timing seemed serendipitous? His ascent was quiet, almost anticlimactic, yet it held the weight of inevitability. Rome believed in chaos, but Claudius thrived in it. In the eyes of a world that laughed, the scholar, the outsider, had become the ruler, holding the fate of millions in hands the world had assumed incapable. And so the accidental emperor began his reign, quietly, thoughtfully, observing every ripple of fear, loyalty, and ambition around him. The world saw a timid, awkward man taking an impossible throne, but Claudius carried within him the strategy of decades, a mind honed in silence, ready to navigate the perilous dance of power. His rise, mysterious and improbable, marked the beginning of a reign that no one could have predicted, and that no one would fully understand. Underestimated, yet decisive. Claudius had taken the throne in silence, but his first acts as emperor revealed a mind far sharper than anyone imagined. The world expected timid hesitation, but in quiet corridors of power, he began shaping Rome with a wisdom masked as simple governance. Every decree, every appointment carried a hidden hand, guiding the empire subtly toward stability and consolidating his own survival. His first decrees startled observers, not because they were flashy, but because they were precise. Claudius reformed the bureaucracy, appointing intelligent men from unexpected backgrounds, often outsiders, over entrenched aristocrats. To the world, it seemed like odd favoritism, yet each choice secured loyalty and created a network of allies bound by gratitude and mutual benefit. The mystery was clear. Why such care in these early acts? Claudius understood that power was not seized with armies alone. It was built through the silent loyalty of those who believed they had been chosen by chance. He also addressed laws, taxes, and administration quietly but efficiently. Rome was a sprawling, chaotic empire, and the public rarely noticed small changes until their effects rippled across cities and provinces. Each reform strengthened his authority, often in ways invisible to those who expected spectacle rather than strategy. The genius of Claudius lay in making the extraordinary appear ordinary, a magician performing without fanfare while the empire adjusted to his will. Even behind palace walls, Claudius observed and recorded the reactions of senators and advisors. Every hesitant glance, every subtle question, every whispered doubt was a piece of intelligence. He studied which allies could be trusted, which enemies were easily manipulated, and which were dangerous. The seemingly mild decrees were carefully layered traps, rewards, and tests, all designed to consolidate power without provoking open rebellion. What appeared as simple administration was, in reality, a quiet battle of wits, conducted in ink, scrolls, and whispered conversations. His knowledge of history guided every move. Claudius had read of emperors undone by arrogance and impatience, and he avoided their mistakes. Rather than assert dominance through intimidation, he built it with precision, a hidden hand that few could trace. Even those who thought him weak would find themselves caught in a web of carefully orchestrated influence. The real mystery of Claudius' early reign lies in what the world never fully recognized: intelligence cloaked as ordinary duty. To many, his decrees seemed minor, unremarkable, even naive. But each action was calculated, securing both Rome's stability and his own survival. The awkward, stammering emperor was quietly proving that leadership did not always roar. It sometimes whispered, measured, and waited. As historians would later argue, Claudius's hidden genius was in patience and subtlety. Every decision strengthened alliances, punished threats, and created a perception of harmlessness that would keep him alive in a dangerous world. And yet the true question remains: did anyone at the time realize just how carefully the so-called accidental emperor was shaping the fate of Rome? Or was his brilliance destined to remain a mystery, visible only to those who looked beyond the laughter and underestimation? A land across the sea awaited, untamed and full of danger. Claudius, the stammering, awkward emperor the world dismissed, prepared to lead Rome's legions into the unknown. No grand speeches, no display of martial bravado, just quiet calculation, careful planning, and a mind that had learned the art of patience in the shadows. The conquest of Britain would become one of his most surprising and mysterious achievements. Rome expected chaos, perhaps even failure, from an emperor so underestimated. Yet Claudius approached the campaign with meticulous care. He studied maps, rivers, and coastal defenses. He listened to generals, but he also observed them, noting which men were brave, which were reckless, and which might betray him. The genius of Claudius lay not in the roar of battle, but in the quiet orchestration of every movement, every supply route, every possible outcome. To those who doubted him, it seemed almost accidental that the legions succeeded. To those who understood, it was brilliant and deliberate. He also used diplomacy where others might have relied solely on force. Alliances with local tribes, strategic marriages, and calculated promises of favor helped Rome weaken Britain from within. The legions moved with precision, guided by Claudius's invisible hand. Every step was measured, every decision layered with contingencies. The mystery remains. How did a man mocked for his physical weakness command one of Rome's most complex military operations, and do so with remarkable efficiency? Claudius himself eventually crossed the Channel, arriving with his army to symbolize leadership. But he did not fight on the front lines as many expected. His presence was enough to inspire and intimidate simultaneously. While historians celebrate generals and soldiers, Claudius's subtle role is often overlooked. He coordinated intelligence, ensured supply chains, and monitored the morale of both his troops and the enemy. He turned uncertainty into an advantage, exploiting every hesitation in the opposing tribes. The accidental emperor had become a master of both strategy and psychology, leading an empire-wide operation from the shadows. Even the final stages of the conquest carry an air of mystery. Claudius celebrated victory with modesty, presenting the campaign as a routine annexation. Yet the reality was far more complex. His decisions had prevented massive losses, maintained internal loyalty, and demonstrated that a supposedly timid ruler could orchestrate feats of remarkable ambition. The conquest of Britain was not just a military achievement, it was a revelation. Claudius proved that intellect, patience, and subtle control could outweigh brute strength and spectacle. The empire had doubted him. The historians would forget the quiet genius behind the victory, and yet the islands of Britain bore the mark of an emperor who thrived in invisibility. The true mystery remains how much of this campaign was carefully planned in advance, and how much relied on Claudius' uncanny ability to adapt, read human behavior, and manipulate circumstances quietly, almost invisibly. As night falls on the shores of history, one thing is certain. Claudius's conquest of Britain was not the act of an accidental ruler. It was the triumph of the scholar in the shadows. The emperor underestimated the man whose patience and mind turned ridicule into empire-wide success. The walls of power hide many secrets. Claudius had become emperor, yet the palace itself was a labyrinth of whispers, schemes, and silent dangers. Every corridor echoed with ambition, every glance concealed a threat. To survive and thrive, he would need more than armies. He would need intuition, subtlety, and a mind attuned to the shadows. Behind the grandeur of Rome's palace, the true power often resided not with the emperor, but with those who whispered in his ear. Advisors, senators, wives, and freedmen maneuvered like pieces on a board, each seeking advantage. Claudius, the scholar who had once hidden behind books and laughter, now faced a new puzzle. Determining friend from foe, loyalty from deceit. Every smile could mask a dagger, every compliment a trap. The mystery of palace life was clear. Even the ruler could be manipulated if he underestimated the subtle currents swirling around him. Claudius's awareness of these forces became his shield. He observed carefully, testing alliances, rewarding subtle loyalty, and allowing some schemes to play out under careful watch. To outsiders, he seemed cautious, even indecisive, but in truth, each action was deliberate. He learned which whispers were harmless, which were dangerous, and which could be used to his advantage. The palace, once a place of mockery and exclusion, became a stage for his subtle mastery of power. Much of the intrigue centered on those closest to him. Family, wives, and freedmen held the potential to sway decisions, manipulate outcomes, and control perception. Claudius's second wife, for example, wielded influence in ways few could see, while senators plotted silently, balancing fear and greed. Each relationship required careful attention, each conversation a test of loyalty. Claudius's genius lay in allowing others to believe they had influence, while he quietly guided events to serve his long-term goals. The mystery: how much did Claudius truly control, and how much did he let unfold, letting others believe they held power while he silently orchestrated outcomes? His past as the overlooked scholar gave him an advantage. He understood patience, observation, and timing, knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Even minor decisions were layered with hidden intentions. Appointments, public speeches, and ceremonial gestures all served dual purposes. Those who sought to manipulate him often found themselves unknowingly furthering his aims. In the shadows of the palace, Claudius's intellect shone brightest, invisible to most eyes but undeniable to history. The palace was a realm of mystery, where life and death could hinge on a whispered word or a subtle glance. Claudius moved through it with quiet calculation, aware that the walls themselves seemed to watch. Every plot against him, every veiled threat, became an opportunity to reinforce loyalty, test allies, and strengthen his position. The emperor, underestimated by the world, had become a master of unseen forces, thriving in the murky dance of palace intrigue. And yet, even with such control, a sense of mystery lingered. Who truly pulled the strings? Was Claudius the puppet, or the puppeteer? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps it was the delicate balance between observation and action, patience and decisiveness, knowledge and intuition that allowed him to survive where others might have fallen. In the shadows of Rome's palace, the true Claudius remained a mystery. A ruler in plain sight, yet unreadable, a genius hidden beneath the guise of caution. Every death tells a story, and in Claudius's empire the shadows whispered secrets few dared to speak aloud. Senators, wives, advisors, even close relatives, one by one, deaths appeared in the quiet corridors of power. Some claimed natural causes, others hinted at poison. And always, behind each disappearance, a lingering question. Was Claudius involved, or merely a witness to the deadly currents swirling through Rome? Death in Rome was never far, but during Claudius's reign, it seemed particularly pervasive. Close allies turned cold overnight, rivals vanished quietly, and those who spoke too loudly often ended their days mysteriously. The emperor, who had once been mocked for weakness, now ruled amid a web of death and fear. The mystery is palpable. Was Claudius silently orchestrating the removal of threats, or did the dangers of the palace simply consume those around him? Few could answer with certainty. Whispers suggest his wives played their roles as well. Some historians point to the subtle influence of Messalina and later Agrippina, whose ambitions may have led to secretive acts of elimination. Yet Claudius, shrewd and observant, seemed always one step ahead, ensuring his position remained secure. The deaths, real or rumored, added to the air of mystery, casting shadows over even his seemingly benign decisions. Each casualty was a puzzle piece in the grand, hidden architecture of his rule. Claudius's genius in these dark times was his patience. He did not act rashly. He watched, noted, and allowed events to unfold. Those who underestimated him believed he was a helpless figure, but he was absorbing everything: the timing of deaths, the reactions of the Senate, the fears and loyalties of his household. To many, it seemed as though fortune alone protected him, but the real secret lay in his ability to let chaos reveal its patterns. The mysterious deaths were a mirror reflecting both the dangers of power and the quiet strength of a ruler who knew when to intervene and when to observe. He also understood perception. Rome needed an emperor who appeared stable, humane, even fragile. If Claudius had been seen as ruthless, his reign might have crumbled under fear and rebellion. Yet by letting some deaths remain unexplained, he maintained the illusion of vulnerability while secretly mastering the currents of influence. In this balance of visible innocence and hidden awareness lay his power, subtle, dangerous, and mysterious. The true enigma of Claudius's reign is not the deaths themselves, but what they reveal about him. Was he a passive witness to the lethal dance of Rome's elite, or the quiet hand directing it? Perhaps the answer is deliberately unknowable, a secret left for history to ponder. The stammering, awkward emperor, once laughed at as a weakling, now presided over life and death with the calm precision of a man who understood the subtle rules of survival. And so, the mystery deepens. In the halls where laughter once mocked him, death now spoke softly, invisibly, carrying lessons he had learned long before. Claudius's brilliance lay not only in conquering lands or reforming laws, but in navigating a realm where every step could be fatal. In the end, the empire survived, the emperor endured, and the shadows around him whispered stories no one would ever fully understand. Beneath the public eye, Claudius worked quietly, reshaping Rome with reforms almost invisible to those around him. While the Senate debated loudly and the populace focused on spectacles, the emperor refined laws, reorganized provinces, and built bridges, both literal and metaphorical. His genius lay in subtlety, power exercised quietly, effectiveness measured not in applause, but in lasting change. Claudius's reforms often went unnoticed, yet they carried profound impact. He codified laws to protect vulnerable citizens, addressed corruption in local administration, and ensured that Rome's sprawling bureaucracy functioned more efficiently. To ordinary Romans, these changes might have seemed small or technical, but they quietly strengthened imperial authority and stability. The mystery is striking. A man mocked for weakness had transformed governance in ways that history rarely highlights, proving that subtle intellect could wield as much power as armies or rhetoric. He also opened doors to new talent. Claudius appointed individuals from lower social classes to key positions, often overlooked by the elite. These choices were strategic, not charitable. Each appointment secured loyalty, enhanced efficiency, and quietly undermined entrenched aristocratic power. Few realized that while Claudius appeared modest, he was reshaping the very structure of Rome, laying a foundation for an empire more resilient than before. Beyond politics and administration, Claudius extended his vision to infrastructure. Roads, aqueducts, and ports were built or restored, connecting distant provinces and increasing trade. These practical projects went largely uncelebrated, yet they enhanced Rome's cohesion and prosperity. The emperor's hand was almost invisible, but the results were tangible. Claudius understood that the true power of leadership often comes from action unseen, the work that stabilizes society and empowers generations to come. At the same time, Claudius's reforms subtly strengthened his position. By addressing corruption, promoting competence, and creating networks of gratitude, he reinforced loyalty while reducing opposition. The genius of these reforms was hidden. The public thought him cautious, even timid, but in truth he was quietly securing the empire and his own legacy with methods that were as clever as they were understated. The mystery of Claudius's reforms is that they reveal a ruler who understood influence, patience, and perception. He achieved profound change without drama, without confrontation, and without drawing attention to himself. While others chased glory or wielded fear, Claudius quietly restructured Rome, ensuring stability in ways the world would barely notice. Perhaps the most fascinating question remains: how much of his brilliance went unrecognized in his time? Rome remembered the stammering, awkward emperor, yet his legacy endured in laws, cities, and loyal networks that survived centuries. Claudius's hidden reforms remind us that true genius often works in silence, shaping the course of history while the world looks elsewhere, too distracted by spectacle to notice the quiet hand at work. History often forgets the quiet ones. Claudius, mocked as weak, stammering, and awkward, left a legacy far richer than most realize. While historians focused on his physical flaws or the drama of his court, they overlooked the subtle brilliance that preserved an empire, conquered new lands, and reformed a sprawling bureaucracy. His story is a reminder that what the world remembers is rarely the full truth. Claudius's reign was full of accomplishments that rarely make the headlines of history books. He secured the empire's borders, annexed Britain, restructured Rome's administration, and protected the vulnerable from the abuses of power. Yet, so often his stammer and limp overshadowed these achievements. The mystery lies in this. How could someone ridiculed as incompetent quietly achieve what many great men of history struggled to accomplish? Perhaps the very perception of weakness allowed him to act unnoticed, maneuvering through political and military challenges without drawing the attention of jealous rivals. Even his personal relationships, once criticized, were exercises in careful calculation. Alliances were built through marriages, strategic appointments, and subtle diplomacy. Claudius's attention to loyalty and observation allowed him to navigate palace intrigue and survive where others perished. History remembered the awkward stammerer, but few understood the mind that quietly held the empire together, guided decisions with foresight, and transformed the structures of power to last beyond his reign. The misrepresentation of Claudius's legacy continues to fascinate historians and storytellers alike. He was often portrayed as a fool or a puppet, yet the very successes of his rule suggest otherwise. He mastered the art of appearing harmless while exercising careful authority. Every reform, conquest, and strategic move reflected patience, intelligence, and a subtle hand that few could trace. The emperor the world laughed at was, in truth, quietly redefining leadership, showing that visible strength is not the only measure of power. Claudius's story reminds us that the image history preserves is selective. Much of the drama, gossip, and mockery overshadowed the tangible achievements of governance, infrastructure, law, and empire building. He turned invisibility into advantage, using the world's underestimation as armor. The mystery remains how much of Rome's stability and success during his reign was the result of deliberate cunning rather than simple fortune. In the end, Claudius's legacy is as much a mystery as his life. The stammering, awkward emperor is remembered by many as a figure of ridicule, but those who look closer see a strategist, a scholar, and a survivor. His victories were measured in subtlety, his reforms often unnoticed, and his survival amid palace intrigue almost miraculous. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson of Claudius's reign. True influence does not always roar. It whispers, it shapes quietly, and it endures in ways the world may not immediately recognize. History misunderstood him, yet the empire endured, and the impact of his mind, patience, and foresight quietly shaped the course of Rome for generations. Claudius was not an accidental emperor, nor a weak one. He was the master of the invisible, a ruler whose legacy remains mysterious, profound, and largely unsung. In the end, what did we truly know about him? Claudius, the stammering, awkward emperor, had ruled one of history's greatest empires with subtlety few could recognize. Behind the laughter, the ridicule, and the whispers, he had mastered secrets, the quiet manipulation of power, the careful orchestration of loyalty, and the unseen shaping of history itself. The man the world dismissed had become the emperor of mysteries. Every conquest, reform and decree carried layers unseen. Claudius's hand was invisible yet precise. Provinces were stabilized, legions moved strategically, and Rome's bureaucracy became efficient under his guidance. To outsiders, it seemed that fortune alone had protected him. The public saw a hesitant, awkward ruler, but the mystery lay in the unseen genius, the patience, observation, and quiet intellect that transformed ridicule into authority. Claudius understood that true power often lies not in spectacle, but in the invisible hand guiding events, while others assume control. Even his court was a theatre of subtle influence. Advisors, family, and rivals believed they could shape him, yet many of their actions inadvertently strengthened his position. Every whispered conversation, every calculated pause, every decision to appear hesitant was part of a larger design. Claudius' mastery of perception allowed him to survive the deadly intrigues of Rome while quietly reinforcing his power. The emperor, who seemed accidental, was, in truth, carefully orchestrating the empire's every pulse. The enigmatic aspect of Claudius's reign is not just what he accomplished, but what he left uncertain. Many historians have debated how involved was he in the darker events of his court. How much of Rome's stability during his rule was luck versus meticulous planning? Perhaps the answers are unknowable, for Claudius himself was the keeper of secrets, revealing only what he wished the world to see. He was both scholar and strategist, emperor and observer, weaving a life that seemed ordinary while shaping extraordinary outcomes. Even his personality, stammering, awkward, seemingly fragile, was a tool. It disarmed rivals, lowered expectations, and masked a mind capable of extraordinary foresight. Claudius turned underestimation into an advantage, allowing the world to misjudge him while he quietly mastered the art of survival and governance. In the shadows of Rome's political storm, he moved with a calm precision few could rival. Claudius remains one of history's most mysterious rulers. His life challenges the notion that strength is always visible, that intelligence must always roar, that power must always dominate. He governed quietly, observed endlessly, and survived relentlessly. The Emperor of Secrets taught that patience, subtlety, and the art of invisibility could achieve what brashness and force could not. And so, as we look back across the centuries, Claudius remains a paradox, laughed at, underestimated, and yet profoundly capable. He conquered lands, reformed Rome, and navigated deadly intrigue, all while remaining enigmatic. The world may never fully know the depth of his mind or the precise mechanisms of his genius. But in the silence, in the shadows, in the careful orchestration of a life often dismissed, Claudius's true power endures, hidden, quiet, and utterly mysterious. As the shadows of history fall, Claudius emerges not as the awkward stammerer the world believed him to be, but as a master of subtlety, patience, and hidden genius. He turned ridicule into advantage, invisibility into power, and quiet observation into control over one of the greatest empires the world has ever known. Behind every smile, every hesitant step, every whispered conversation, he shaped Rome in ways that few would notice, and even fewer would understand. What history often misjudges is the quiet mind that rules not with spectacle, but with foresight. Claudius's life reminds us that brilliance does not always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it whispers in the shadows, waits patiently, and acts only when the moment is right. If you've been captivated by the hidden mysteries of Claudius's reign, don't forget to subscribe to About Mystery and hit the notification bell so you never miss a journey into the shadows of history. Share your thoughts in the comments. Did Claudius truly rule by chance, or was his genius far more intentional than the world realized? And now, a whisper from the next chapter of Rome's dark tales. Our next story will explore Nero, the infamous emperor known for his cruelty and the devastating Great Fire of Rome. What drove him to madness, and what secrets linger behind his notorious reign? The mysteries of Nero await, and the shadows are ready to speak.